Hello, this is Adrian from my channel Random Drop. We are so close to the announcement of 6.0 till our Lord and Savior Yoshi P walks on stage and finally announces where the next 2 years of this game are going. And really, I wanted to get my personal wish list out there of the top 5 things I hope and wish and pray to God I'm at least right about one of them that they add to this game. Some of these we may disagree a lot on. Some of these may not even be your priority, but they are mine. Just from someone who has played a lot of MMOs and put in a lot of time into a certain particular one. But there are certain things that, I miss and I wish, or maybe some things this game was a bit better at. And I hope that Yoshi P is still looking at this game and trying to grow in different ways rather than just kind of settling in the same old thing. All right, well, let's get this going. These are the top 5 things I want most to be added in 6.0. Number 5. So tanks is a funny thing, right? So the beginning of A Realm Reborn, I really liked how tanks felt because people could actually steal threat from you. Healers, very specifically, could steal threat from you. So you would have to more do over your like, hey, I need to do more of my tank rotation, right? To make sure I'm getting threat. Because this fucking healer's pulling aggro on Titan because all these goddamn AoE heals. And now it's so fucking brain dead. It is just, you're a blue DPS and no matter what you do, you're gonna go hold aggro because you're fucking the blue DPS and everything you do generates threat. And that's just so not interesting. Warrior was so cool when you could stance switch and do like crazy shit with that. And Death Knight, overall, Death Knight plays way better. But it's like so fucking boring. Like you took away one of my rotations and now I'm just hitting 1, 2, 3 a bunch. And I love all the OGCDs and all that stuff you gave me, but I feel like I have very little choice in what I'm doing, right? It's a lot of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 to get this fucking mana back. And I really wish I had choices to do other things, right? That delirium combo we used to have in the past. Yeah, it's just, they really need a rework in terms of, hey, you guys did a good job reworking in this time, but we need something better. Or we need to rework how threat works and all that because it's fucking boring. And I understand we don't need to make the job class any harder or the role of tanking any harder because, hey, this game is low on tanks and healers, so we don't want to push them away. But it is kind of, it's way too easy to hold threat, or there's very little things you have to interrupt or watch for. It is just pull wall to wall, man. And it's fine, but I want more, right? I want things to ask of my tank more. I want to try to do different things with tank. The only excitement I get out of tank is when I fight a fucking boss that is finally there to like actually knock the shit out of me. And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Let's see if I can survive. And I find that shit fun. But those are very few and far between. I think, hey, the blue DPS stuff you did is great. Let's get some more tank shit back in there. Number 4. The next addition to 6.0 that I hope they add is a sub-job or role system. Man, sub-jobs were real weird, or, cross-class abilities is what we had at the beginning of 14. But it did pretty much break down to, hey, pick these 8 cross-class abilities, don't pick anything else. You have to get Provoke as a warrior. You have to get Blood for Blood as a ranged physical DPS. And yeah, it was the illusion of choice, which is not something like World of Warcraft has a really bad problem of, where they have legendaries and specs and all that sort of shit. But really, you pick the ones that like most people are gonna pick. And yeah, there's some variation to be had, but really, if you want to do things as best as possible, you pick the one that everyone's been picking, or mathematically broke down to be the best. Which in case of 14's original iteration of it, you need Provoke as a tank. What the fuck? Why is that just not an ability? But whatever. And when I mean a sub-job or role system, I think they should add Berserker to the game. They should add Necromancer, maybe Thief. Maybe Thief is like the tank version of Ninja, or something like that. Because yeah, these jobs had different roles back in the day, right? Dark Knight was a DPS in Final Fantasy XI, and it'd be cool to see them be able to switch over. And then Berserker is that great hint of, hey, I could switch over to a Berserker and be a damage role in this dungeon or in this raid. And really, it could be just like the Summoner is with Astrologian. They varied off more and more, kind of more and more uniquely their own thing. But at the beginning, right, they had a lot of abilities that just crossed over, and there was these finite differences that made this one a healer and made this one a DPS. And I really hope that they kind of look at that system again and are able to like pull out like, hey, these are some sub jobs or sub roles that they could switch to, or it's just a new job, right? Really, we don't need any more brand new jobs. We do not need any more fucking DPS. We're probably good on tanks. The only thing we need is a healer. We don't need any more DPS. Oh god. And really, the only thing I would really accept is, hey, tanks being able to switch over to DPS, or a healer being over to DPS, or a DPS being able to switch over to healer by, you know, their job system and the sub job system, and whatever that really turns out to be. Like a red mage maybe gets a bunch of new abilities to switch over to a support red mage rather than a DPS red mage, and things like that, right? Like really, when we're what? I'm assuming we're gonna get to level 90 in this next expansion. I don't need a longer rotation. These rotations are fine. We do not need more. Maybe like a little tweaks here and there for like gameplay purposes, but most people are pretty good where they're at. Some of the tanks play a little bit boring and maybe they need some reworks, like Warrior and Dark Knight a little bit, are kind of a little bit too similar. I think Paladin and Gunbreaker are in really good spots. But other than that, we don't need a new set of 3 or 4 abilities really. And I think those new abilities could be whatever classes they choose to be able to change roles, and that'd be really awesome. It'd be a whole new dynamic to the game and would give us a lot more options in terms of, hey, we want to see these neat classes in the game. We want to see Necromancer. We want to see Berserker. And yeah, and really they're just slight variations of the things we have now. They just, you know, this one does damage. This one does damage now instead of healing, and so forth. Number 3. Another thing I really wish for is for them to take a second look at the stats in this game and the materia system and kind of how gear works in general. It is very, hey, go stack crit, go for damage, and health. There's not really much thought to it. Everything breaks down to pretty much stacking the materia that you do not have. That is, oh, you don't have direct hit? Well, or you have direct hit on this piece of armor? Well, stack crit. Oh, you don't have... You have direct hit and crit, well, stack det, right? It's kind of like a, you know, great, lesser than or greater than. You just kind of go down the list. Can't really stack anything if it's already on the piece of gear itself. And it just leads to materia being really robotic and uninteresting. I kind of really wish they would just kind of do away with the system and do something more wacky with materias. Like, hey, have them act like materias. Maybe like remove belts, because belts are fucking useless in this game, and have them be like a large materia slot, right? They could literally call it large materia, and they could be this game's equivalent of trinkets. And of course, people will break down hey, this is the trinket to get, everyone should get this trinket, and so forth. Like, that will happen, but it's about having fun. Like, yes, those people will do that, but if you add a bunch of wacky bullshit in terms of like, hey, this is a piece of item or gear that does something different, people will love it, right? They will love the one like, hey, this one lets me teleport for some reason. Oh, this one gives me a 2% chance to get an extra string on my auto attacks. Mathematically, it's just more damage, and it's kind of fun, fucking whatever, right? But it's only 2%, so really, I could drop it or leave it, and stuff like that, right? Or this is like a pocket heal, or this one's like a defensive, or something like that, right? And when I'm a DPS and I'm doing this fight on Savage, and I'm really dying to this one part, oh, I have this defensive belt I have, or this large materia item, and I use it for a specific situation, and people could collect them, right? You could have a whole collection system around it of getting all the different ones, and you know, they could be scattered around all the game and whatnot, right? And maybe there's some job specific ones or whatever, but it's about having fun and kind of having a little bit of variation between people and getting people to choose something. But it's not like a huge choice, it is just, hey, this one thing, and then that large materia system can be built on over time. The reason I say it takes up the belt slot, because belts have no fucking, you can't see belts. They do nothing, and they're just there for stats. So you might as well just put something that does something fun. Hey, this one gives haste. I don't fucking know. This one has a very low chance of a double cast. Just fun shit like that. And people will gravitate to it and love it. And again, people will break it down into simple math, but it's just about having those choices. And it is, in the end of the day, it is an illusion of choice. But some people will just choose what the fuck they want and not go with the meta, which is great. Just don't make one that is severely overpowered and broken. Then, you know, and then people will kind of have more options of like, hey, these are all just very situational. Number 2, PvP is the next thing I really want to talk about as well. So PvP in this game is weird. So at the beginning of the game, it was very, I mean, it was just like shoved in there, right? You had all your abilities. People had fucking TP problems, so like ranged DPS and healers can just fucking run away all the time, while the DPS or melee DPS had to worry about their TP to keep up, and there's a weird ranking system and all that. It was fucking weird, and it was like the first thing they chose to do was arenas, like 5v5s or 2v2s, which like even in WoW's case is niche, right? It is very much like a certain group of people really like that, and it's a large group of people in that game, but it's not for everyone. It's not fun for everyone either. While the Battlegrounds is kind of fun for everyone in that game, and or most people. Warsong Gulch, Arathi Basin being incredible classics. The real issue with PvP at the moment is that the game modes kind of suck. They just need capture the flag and control. Like, that's all they need. They need Warsong Gulch and Arathi Basin in this game. They have to be team versus team, not 3 teams fucking fighting each other. It doesn't feel good playing a game and going into a PvP situation where, holy shit, there's like 60 dudes across from me. As a melee, you're just like, okay, I'm either never gonna run in, or I'm gonna run in expecting to die. I hope someone heals me. Like, there's really no strategy other than just waves crashing against each other. It really needs more 10v10 game modes and 15v15 game modes where there can be some strategy, right? Arathi Basin's so interesting because you can attack one place and then another group splinters off and attacks another, and you're kind of creating pressure at all of these different points. Warsong Gulch is very interesting because you have some people who like play defense, or people who play full offense, or people who play the middle and try to control the center of the arena and control it that way and get their flag runs in that way, right? Or some people just go in back and forth, straight capture the flag. So there's a bunch of different strategies you can really approach it with, while the current I don't know what the fuck to call them, their version of Battlegrounds, again, just feel like just waves crashing against each other. And that is the worst part of WoW. Alterac Valley, Isle of Conquest, Wintergrass, those are they're awful. They're terrible to play. It's a large scale conflict. There's a lot of people, ooh, it's epic, right? And like, no, it's fucking aggravating, and people only do it just so they could get the goddamn daily reward. Everyone hates Alterac Valley and Wintergrass, and especially Isle of Conquest. Holy shit. So the game really just needs better game modes. I am fine with the limited abilities that the classes have, and then you can kind of pick and choose, like, hey, these are the abilities that I get to pull in, right? Like, I chose the heal, or I chose the defensive and whatnot, like, and how the classes are kind of built simpler to play overall and removes a bunch of bloat. There could be like a couple more abilities, kind of like give some differentials and things like that to people, but overall, you guys are going the right way with it, because WoW, like, let's be real here, all their classes got cut to like a fucking 3 ability rotation. Like, it's basically the same thing as PvP at this point. Like, the rotations are not hard. It's just a couple of buttons. And imagine trying to do a full fucking rotation in PvP in Final Fantasy XIV. Imagine being a black mage and trying to get that shit off. Or a dragoon, right? And he's like, oh, 1, 2, 3, and you have all these buttons you're worrying about, and then you're worrying about all these people around you. No, the PvP system, in terms of like, hey, how you condense it down to these abilities, is cool. You can imagine more like, hey, each job is more of like a hero character. They all have their certain little quirks, and they all kind of play their own way, and so forth, right? So each job plays pretty uniquely across the board in 14 in PvP, right? Like, the Death Knights have the shot that like pulls things to them, which is just Death Grip from WoW, but it's in PvP, but not in PvE, but whatever. Like, it's cool, right? Like, yeah, go more with that direction, but there just needs to be better rewards as well, and better progression with that stuff. And again, the game modes, people just do not like those game modes, like Seal Front and all that shit. It's like better those capture point ones, but still, it's very off-putting just having these fucking waves hit each other. And then people don't really like the smaller game modes where it's super intimate, like 5v5s or some shit like that, because it feels like fucking arenas in World of Warcraft, and no one really likes playing Attack the Healer and Chase the Healer and all that shit. Like, people really do not like that. And the fact that, like, hey, in Arathi Basin and Warsong Gulch, there's strategy. That healer's not going to be in every fucking place. You can, like, again, to attack over different areas and work on different shit, so that your teams are moving and flowing in different ways, and it could create different situations instead of, again, the 2 same waves just crashing into each other over and over again. So yeah, that's how I feel on PvP. Went a little bit longer than I wanted to on there, but like, yeah, it needs a lot of work, but I think they could get there. They can fucking do it. Number 1. One of Final Fantasy XIV's more frustrating issues is that there's not really much challenging content for smaller groups of people. Of course, we did have the higher levels of the Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, but the time commitment to get to those levels is very large. It's not really something you can jump in and jump out very quickly, and you do have to run with people you very much know that they're going to be on time and be willing to run with you again. What this game really needs is a challenge mode or Mythic Plus system, basically making our dungeons a bit harder with modifiers, time limits, new abilities, and things like that. Remember the days when we used to go through dungeons and actually crowd control things? I know it didn't last very long, but at the beginning of A Realm Reborn, it was a thing, weirdly enough. Now we just pull wall to wall back and forth in every dungeon. No monster really having much of a threat. You can't really go through many dungeons and say, hey, watch out for this blank monster. It does this ability. Really, we kind of just run through and bulldoze every time. It would be really nice to see in the harder modes that, hey, this one has an interrupt that you probably need to knock out. Hey, we should probably CC this thing as we go through, and adding time limits and challenges to that to make it more interesting. And again, modifiers, boss modifiers, floor modifiers. Maybe there's a slow or drops pools of blood, enemies berserk when they're low. The list goes on. This system works very well in WoW and is great for smaller groups of players who don't necessarily have a large group to do Savage at the moment, but for those who want to do something a bit more challenging than just the regular duty roulette. The regular duty roulette is fine. I'm glad it's there, but it's so fucking mind-numbingly boring. I wish I had the choice to try something a little bit harder and maybe get something out of it. And I really hope Yoshida's been listening in the past years for 6.0 and does something new with the dungeon system. Because the current one we can keep, but we need something new on top of it. Something fresh. Number 1. Something I hope to God, and I hope, is that they cut the limited job system. I really don't want them to waste their time on Beastmaster, and maybe it's just me. But Blue Mage, like, yeah, I kind of had fun with it. I've done a lot of it, but yeah, it is very much a side mini game, and just kind of makes me wish like Blue Mage was like able to do more, right? It is this weird thing that I barely ever use Blue Mage, and it's awesome that like, hey, they destroy fates and shit like that. But yeah, it's just I don't need another limited job. I really hope that they take that idea of limited jobs and kind of stop it and focus more development time on the jobs we currently have and give them some more variation. Again, maybe looking into a new loot system or stat system or a trinket system, and spend their time fucking around with that, then just making this whole other mini game system that we do not need, that is going to be capped at level 50 and then 60 and 7 and so forth, right? We don't need it. We don't need it. We don't need it. Hello, this is Adrian from After the Fact. If you made it this far, thank you for watching my top 5, actually top 6 of my wish list for 6.0. I am an idiot and don't know how to count, and I accidentally made 6 of them, and I recorded them and put footage on them, so fuck it, you get a bonus one. Yeah, I really hope they don't really waste any more time on limited jobs. I hope they put that stuff into other things. Try something else out. Other than that, I can't wait. It's almost here. These next couple weeks are going to be a pain in the ass, but I am excited. Please leave a comment below, subscribe, like, do all that. If you want to see any more content from me, I do reviews of other games. I do stream on twitch.tv/rando_0268. Man, I love video games, man. I play all sorts of crazy shit. And yeah. And if you have any, hey, what are you looking forward to in this next expansion? Do you agree with any of the wishes I made or I'm looking forward to? How do you feel about the limited job system? Is it something that you're excited about? Or is it really just, all about the story for you and really not too interested in mechanics, kind of just here for the ride, which a lot of people are. Well, until the next video, this is Adrian from my channel, Random Drop, and I'll see you next time.